Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode. And I've got a fantastic guest for you today, Devin Bisanz, and he's going to teach us, the audience, how to tune in and tune on your unique stage presence for the audience that are interested in public speaking, coaching, giving presentations. Devin's the one, and I'm really happy to have Devin on the show. Welcome, Devin.
How's it going today?
Yeah. Welcome. And I know you've delivered over 2,000 presentations teaching clients how to educate, entertain, inspire audiences. Briefly talk about what you do, how you got there and how the audience can benefit from your presence today.
All right, excellent. I'll just do a quick synopsis. So I was in a major motorcycle accident, had brain trauma, ended up going through a lot of stuff and drugs and all that. And then one day to get out of it, I started writing a book. So I'm writing this book and I'm reading it. And I'm like, man, I want to start speaking. So I'm going to be a motivational speaker. And at that time, I was looking for communities to join. I ended up joining a community called Toastmasters. And I mean, it was okay. I was learning how to speak, but I went around and I started interviewing like professional speakers and comedians. And I started figuring out that and improv, and they're doing all these little exercises. So I took all these little simple exercises, like hands up here means excitement, hands here, trust. I started sharing it with audiences, and then they started saying, oh, hey, can you come train this person or this group of people? Can you come train that group of people? And then it just started growing from a referral-based business until I started working with corporations. Now I work a lot with executives and entrepreneurs. It's by default. I didn't really plan on being a speaker trainer. I wanted to be the speaker, but by default, I'm a good trainer.
That's interesting because there's this saying, some of the best coaches, aren't the best athletes, and some of the top athletes are the worst coaches. It's a different skill and different skill set. So, one thing that's really applicable to the audience is, there's this idea like public speaker, you have to be gregarious, extroverted, the alpha, all this. What about like people that are introverted? Can they be public speakers, and how do they get over this?
Yeah, people come to me all the time and they're like, I'm introverted and I don't like to speak. But the truth is that introverted people are the best speakers because your thoughts are so organized. Everything is well organized when you can think about it and deal with things internally. Extroverted speakers often just go off on tangents or blah, blah, blah. So in my opinion, introverted speakers, it's not really about being an extrovert or introvert. It's about understanding how it works on stage. What are anchor points? How do you structure a talk? How do you raise people's energy? How do you connect with people and build rapport? So all of that is like the tools of the trade. And then the introvert or extrovert, to me, really just says that you can either just stand up there and just ramble on for hours, or you like to be structured and think about what you're about to say.
I love that. I love how you so yeah, one thing is so you talked about like sounds like your ability, like a lot of coaches and consultants and sales, they're good at this these tools that you talk about, like one-on-one, like in close proximity, but then like a public speaker on stage, he's got to use these tools from a distance and also to like maybe hundreds, thousands of people. So how do you critical nonverbal cues that can enhance them, that detract from their presence, all of that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Almost everybody says to me, I'm good at speaking to one or two people. It's when I'm in front of a crowd that I get like I'm scared or nervous or whatever it is. And I mean, that's fair enough. The real difference is that we really want to utilize those one-on-one and one-on-two conversations to be more than just a conversation. So we want to start using like catchphrases or like, has it ever occurred to you that, right? So we're taking a phrase, we're seeding it purposely into these one-on-one conversations. Things that people just, because when we're talking one-on-one, mostly we're not thinking about what we're saying. So then we get on stage, we're in front of people, suddenly we have to think about what we're saying.
Yeah.
My approach to speaking is different in the sense that I take people to those one-on-one conversations. So we'll write like 90-second stories, and then we'll seed those into one-on-one conversations. And then when you get on stage, the one thing that you want to do is just tell it bigger gestures. But even on a one-on-one basis, I still recommend doing big gestures. Sometimes people say to me, like in a small audience, they're like, "Well, maybe it's like you're too big or da da da," and I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm always in my head speaking to a huge audience, right?"
Yeah.
So for me, I'm always doing big gestures, but for a lot of people, they're doing little gestures. And then when they get in front of a big audience, they're still doing little gestures. And then they're wondering, well, why aren't I connecting with this audience? And the truth is, they just really have to open up to like it's bigger, a lot more people. And you got to talk to those people in the back in the nosebleed section. And I'm always talking to those people. But I recommend that people do talk to those people, like, because that's where you get that stage presence, what people call stage presence from. And just to clarify a little bit more, because you did talk a little bit about how some people are like, they're a little more shy or they're not so outgoing. Again, when we're on stage, I mean, it would be like, I always compare it to sports or playing an instrument. You really want to learn the exact steps that you use on stage so that you can tap into that bigger character and you can become almost like your alter ego.
Interesting. So it's almost I have a good friend, he's a professional public speaker, and he talks about how getting on stage is like acting, or like a musician, like a rock star, just doing their thing. So you mentioned stories, and kind of some of the best talks I've had talk about stories. And so what are your top tips for keeping stories short yet impactful during a presentation, and but also not just entertain, but also pack with value?
That's another good question. One of the things I always share, and I've studied a lot of speakers. That's what I do. I just study speakers with the sound off, sound on. And one of the top tips for storytelling is stick to the story highlights. We want to avoid going into all those little details. Like, I was driving on the highway, the sun's beaming down, there's a bird on the left, there's pebbles on, like, you get stuck. A lot of times we're getting stuck into those long story, longer. And if we really learn to stick, what are the top details? What are the top moments in that story? And as we're moving through that really can make our stories a lot tighter. Another tip that I have is to use pauses. It's to have like, what's in it for the audience? So what do they get out of this? So asking a question in the middle of the story, or using an imagine this, like those imaginary scenarios, and putting you, the listener, into the story. So let's say I'm telling a story and I go into the grocery store and I'm like, well, and I'm walking in there and there's somebody screaming at the manager, and then she runs out of the store and she looks at me and and she kept on going, right? It's kind of just a story. But if we add some dialogue, we put the listener into that story, we stick to those highlights, then we can really clean that story up. So I'm walking in the store the other day. There's a lady, she's screaming at the manager, "Your store is the worst store I've ever seen in my life." And as you can imagine, you're kind of like watching it, but wow, it's crazy. And then she walks right on by, you make eye contact. So what I'm doing is I'm adding that dialogue, which adds more value to a story. I'm putting you, the listener, as you can imagine, or you're walking by, or what do you do? What would you do in that situation? So I'm putting them into the story, and then I'm really just sticking to I'm not getting into all the details of walking the store. I'm just kind of sticking to those highlights.
Yeah, I love that. And some of the most impactful presentations are stories, and that's how people pass narratives down to generations, those through stories. What I really love is when you talked about preparing, because when you see someone on stage and they're just like smooth and natural, it's like an athlete. Like talk about like rehearsing. You talked about because you're always studying public speakers, and you talked about watching speakers with the sound off. So what are some tools and tips for preparing for big TEDx talks or keynotes, or even like webinars, presentations?
Yeah, I'll give a good tip. One time went to a comedy show. I love the comedian. Oh man, he's making the audience, involving the audience. I thought it was impromptu and everything. After the show, you know how you can buy their DVDs? I buy the DVD, I go home, plug in the DVD. It's the exact same show, like the same cadence, the same jokes to the audience. Like it was exactly the same, but a totally different audience. And I think that a lot of speakers, when they hear a speaker and they think, wow, this speaker's amazing, they're forgetting that that speaker did that presentation 200 or 300 times. And when it comes to a TEDx, really what you want to do is you want to get your material out and then practice it and then rework it. Because the first time you do a presentation, it's never going to be the material that you're just looking for some gold here and there. And then you do the presentation again and you literally have to do it hundreds of times. So what I always do with my clients to just weed out having to find hundreds of audiences is to start recording themselves and just record it. You watch it, you record it, share with your friends, share with me, and then keep on honing it down, because you have to do it hundreds of times, not just in your head, not just practicing in the shower when you're driving your car, but you have to visually see and hear yourself speaking and be able to share it with other people who can visually see and hear yourself speaking. And when you get really comfortable doing that, then you'll realize that you have to do it that many times and your material hones in. And everybody starts out as a bad speaker at first. So really just about putting in that time. You have to put it in. There's no choice.
Yeah. The other, because I was reading somewhere that for every minute of a bit like a keynote, they put in like some of the top speakers, they put in 15 minutes to an hour per minute to perfect that single minute. And which also kind of brings me to this thing is because I love recording and I love, like, for example, YouTube and Zoom and webinars, and you can do solo podcasts, just get it out there and kind of hone, and just like a comedian or, with your material. Talk about how do you prepare for just like the unexpected, like for example, the teleprompter goes off or the lights go off, or the slides don't advance, and like just where the shit hits the fan and you have to go. How do you prepare for those types of things?
Yeah. What I would suggest is to have some saver lines ready for those things. Like if the projector doesn't go off, like, geez, they must not have updated it since Thomas Edison days, like, I find that when you address the elephant in the room, if something's not working your way and you just sort of roll with the punches, you're able to talk about it, and people will laugh and they understand, like, stuff happens all the time. If your joke bombs, I just say, oh, didn't like that one. That's okay, because I have 100 more where that came from. And the audience will be, oh no, or they'll go, oh, or whatever it is, but you're getting that reaction. But you're not just like trying to slide through and pretend like it didn't exist. You're acknowledging it, you're getting a laugh. And so we call those saver lines. So I always have my client and myself, we always come up with saver lines. So if something goes wrong, we got something, we're already prepared. Like we're one step ahead. And then people are like, oh wow, they're so impromptu. Everything's been planned out.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. So kind of coming to the end of this, and talking about a lot of people listening to this, they want to go from good speaker to a great one. What steps can they do? And then also my other question is kind of the future, because now we've got virtual events, we got virtual presentations, podcasting is kind of like the new modern day speaking or book tour. So how should one be positioning themselves in these evolving communication trends?
Yeah, that's a big question. I can say that let's take AI just for an example. I just had AI help me write an entire new website, all the SEO, all the linking, like everything. I just took away somebody's job by using AI. And then I said, hey, I want you to write me like an outline for a speech for my website. And it didn't write a good outline. And I find that a lot of speakers who are using AI to write their speeches, they're not getting the same connection with, there's just something about the way that you say it and the way that you are. And I think that people need to remember that when it comes to speaking, it's important to learn the basics of speaking before you get up on stage, so that when you get up on stage, you're showing off, basically. Kind of like if you were to play the guitar and I give you a guitar and you're in front of 20 or 30 people and suddenly that's where you're practicing your guitar, like you'll never do that. You'd get a guitar, you'd go learn a scale or two, you'd sit in your bedroom, wherever it's at, for like 200 hours learning it all, and then you do a recital in front of people, right? But yet, for some reason, when it comes to speaking, people think that they have to practice in front of these large audiences. And that's not the case. You really need to learn the scales and the chords of speaking. What is my body language saying here? What am I saying with my eyes when I have them raised up? Or how am I pausing? Or what's my facial gestures going on? Here's the big one. If your body language and your facial gestures and your tonality and your words are all the same, like they all match each other, then you're sharing a message that is very congruent. And there's a really good chance that the audience is going to get that message that you're receiving. Because remember, it's not the message that you're sharing, it's the message that they're getting. So when we're disconnected, when our body language doesn't match our tonality and our words, and we're saying something like, I'm really excited to be here today. But I hear it all the time. But that's just a good example of how, like, you're disconnected from the audience. So when you really want to get that connection, the real gold lies in just saying everything, so your body and your voice and your words are saying the same thing.
Yeah, I love that. So to finish it out, because I really love that, is like you can basically you can either use the virtual and the digital media as practice rooms, or even like you can use it to scale it in addition to like in person. And then how can people reach out to you and follow your socials? And if they need like a speaking coach, how can they reach out to you and work with you?
Yeah, cool. Just to talk about the AI, like, I want to go VR. I like VR. I like that it's so real that, now you could have people, you could be in Houston, I'm in Vancouver, like literally all over the world. So one of the things that I want to do I'm growing a community right now called the Empowered Speakers Circle. And that's one of the steps that I want to get into, is that VR, because I think that's really cool. And yeah, if people want to reach out to me, they can go check out my name, Devin Bisanz, DEVINBISANZ.com. We launched a new website just today, even. I'm going to put it up today. And then they can get in, join my Empowered Speaker Circle. We're giving away free trainings, free lessons, but we also have membership as well for anybody who wants to just fast forward and just learn all the steps of speaking right away.
I love that. And the best way to supercharge your acceleration is to have mentors and people that have done it before you, and coaches, and that way you save a lot of time and mistakes. For all the audience, be sure to give Devin's socials a like and follow, and reach out to him if you're interested. And thanks so much for coming on.